The first card we're going to take a look at now is a new Dominus card. And this one, I think, has... I mean, of course, we know the potential of the Dominus card. So depending on the restrictions and the effect on this card, it could potentially be a very big deal. And it is Dominus Spiral, a normal trap card. You can only activate a card with this card's name once per turn. If your opponent activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard this turn, you can activate this card from your hand. Target one monster your opponent controls, return it to the hand extra deck. Then, if you have no traps in your graveyard, your opponent can special summon a monster from their graveyard. If you activated this card from your hand, you cannot activate light and dark monsters effects for the rest of this duel. Oh, okay. This is a lot to take in, even from just one card here. This is very interesting. This is very interesting for a lot of reasons. Okay, let's think about this card in, because this card has multiple uses, and it really gives this whole Dominus trap card thingy. It gives it a really interesting twist. So okay, my thoughts are all over the place right now. Let me try and put them in order. This card, if you use it completely independently of the other Dominus cards, obviously can be played in a fair share of decks, but light and dark, it only locks you out of 2 attributes compared to the other decks, other cards which lock you out of 3. Meaning that it's technically the least restrictive out of the Dominus cards. At the same time, light and dark is pretty massive for a lot of decks, but there are obviously decks that could still play this card. You know, there's decks that play like just fires, decks that just play waters, everything, you know, like the Fiendsmith cannot play this, but like any deck that plays this, you're not going to have SP Little Knight and Typhon and Zeus and all that good stuff, you know. Light and dark is a pretty hefty restriction, so I think it's fair that this one only locks you out of 2 attributes. I think the most interesting part about this card's lock is that it's not exclusive from one or the other Dominus card, right? Like, because the thing with Dominus Purge and Dominus Impulse is that they basically can never be played together because they have the exact different attributes from each other, right? Like, you get 3 attributes from the one card and the other 3 are on the other card, so they can never really be played together except for like a really, really specific deck, like, I don't know, Phantasm Spiral or something that doesn't play with monsters at all, can play both, but like for the most part, they are designed to never be played together, right? And here comes another Dominus card in the mix that can hypothetically be paired with the other Dominus cards, right? Like, you can, if your deck doesn't need water, dark, fire, and light, you can technically play Dominus Purge and this one, right? Or the other way around, of course, if your deck doesn't need wind, light, earth, and dark, your deck can play Dominus Impulse and Spiral. And the interesting part, of course, about being able to play the Dominus cards together is that you avoid the restriction on them, right? Like, for Dominus Impulse and Purge, you get the pop if you have a trap in the grave already. For Dominus Spiral, if you manage to put a trap into your graveyard, this card is just a hand trap compulse, right? Which is pretty good. I mean, compulse, of course, is not a very good card anymore, but if you could activate it from your hand, I think most decks would play that. Maybe almost any deck that uses hand traps would probably play a compulse that you can use from your hand. So this is very strong if you can avoid the restriction and if you can bypass the drawback of not being able to play light and dark monsters. Of course, it is also tied to a activation requirement, which is different than the other Dominus cards. You know, the other Dominus cards are just like, if your opponent does this, negate it. This one is more like removal that you can use at any time, but there has to be a restriction fulfilled beforehand, which is activating a card effect in hand or grave, a monster effect in hand or grave, which most decks will do, right? Most decks will do this. You just can't use it to like bounce your opponent's normal summon right away, right? But yeah. I think on its own, if you play this without other Dominus cards, without other trap cards in the graveyard, I think it's gonna be a solid card still, because the thing is, your opponent gets a body back from the graveyard, but a body from the graveyard is most likely never the same value as the card you target with this, right? Like if you bounce a Link 3 or a Synchro monster or an Xyz monster, those monsters usually are worth more than one monster from the graveyard, because most monsters that you have in your graveyard on turn 1 have a once per turn effect that you've already used, so whatever you revive is just a body that you can link off or exceed with again. So, but you still, like, you know, like you lose a Link 3, you get one material back from the graveyard. That's still a good trade, potentially, depending on the deck you're playing. I think the most... so this card on its own is okay. I think this card gets very interesting if you compare it with other Dominus cards, especially with another Dominus card. I think this card has very interesting implications with another card that hasn't seen play yet, at least not much. But that is Songs of the Dominators. Let me bring it up for context. I think there could be something here in the future. Obviously, it's very dependent on the deck, but this card, basically, if you have a trap, it's like an imperm / effect veiler that you can activate from your hand if you have no monsters in the graveyard. And if you have a trap in your grave, it adds a Dominus card from your deck to your hand. It also comes with another restriction. But I think the interesting part about this card in regards to Songs of the Dominators is that Songs of the Dominators is only a very high quality card if you have a trap in your grave, so you can add a Dominus card from your deck to your hand, right? Because that's when this card is basically just 2 hand traps in 1 card, right? And this is interesting because previously, what are the ways to get a trap card into the graveyard before activating Songs of the Dominators? Well, there's Infinite Impermanence. But if you didn't draw Infinite Impermanence, the only other way to get a trap card into the graveyard before using this was the Dominus card, right? You would activate a Dominus card first, and then you would activate Songs of the Dominators, which allowed you to then add another Dominus card from your deck. But the problem is, because the other 2 Dominus cards basically can't be played together, you would only add a card that doesn't matter on this turn, right? Like you would be searching the same Dominus card that you had previously activated, and you wouldn't be able to use it that turn because obviously all the Dominus cards are once per turn. Now the math changes significantly when you have 2 different Dominus cards in your deck, because now you can draw Songs of the Dominators paired with Imperm, the Dominus Purge or Impulse that you're playing, and Dominus Spiral. And in all of those instances, you've basically opened 3 hand traps, right? You've basically opened the Imperm Dominus that you've already drawn, plus the songs, plus whatever the songs get you, right? Like, you're going to be able to, like, Dominus Purge your opponent's search, then you're going to be able to Songs of the Dominators, one of their effects, and then search Dominus Spiral to have, like, a bounce later. So this makes this card a lot stronger. However, I will say, the restriction that you are accepting by doing this is very, very strict, right? This is not something that you're going to be seeing every deck doing, because what this does is it says, okay, you're going to be locked out of 4 attributes for the rest of the game, depending on which Dominus you're using, Purge or Impulse. 4 attributes are going to be gone for the rest of the game, and you cannot use monster effects in hand, graveyard, or banishment until the end of the next turn. So it's a very, very strict restriction that you do have to accept if you want to do this, but it does make this card a lot stronger if you're able to search another hand trap with it, basically, that you can use immediately. Like, the impact of this card is a lot stronger if you can fetch a Dominus that you can immediately use, and this makes it so you have a lot higher chance to actually do this, right? You could basically use 12 hand traps, actual traps, which makes your chances of drawing 2 together a lot higher. There wasn't a single deck that could use this combo. Yeah, it's very, very specific. It's very specific. And I'm saying like that's probably a good thing. That's why it's also, I think, fair overall, is because this entire package puts such a huge restraint on your deck. Like it's very, very specific. Not a lot of decks will be able to do this. But more, I just wanted to bring it up because I think that makes this card a lot stronger. In a more realistic world, there's going to be decks that just play this card alone. Or you could see some decks, like, for example, Fire King, right? Fire King is a basically fire-only deck that was using Dominus Impulse. It's a very realistic scenario that if you want to try pure Fire King after this card comes out, you're just going to play Dominus Spiral, Dominus Impulse, and Infinite Impermanence as like a package of 9 cards, which if you draw 2 of them together, you get to ignore the downside on Dominus Spiral, right? Your opponent, it's just a quick play compulse after you impulse or imperm, which is pretty good. You know, that is a pretty good way to give these sort of decks opponents. But even Fire King will have to like not use SP Little Knight after, right? Which is still locking, and Typhon. Locking those kind of decks out of Typhon and SP is still relevant. But yeah, Mermail can also do it. Mermail can also play Imperm, Impulse, Spiral if they want to, you know? A Kashtira, for example, could use Purge, Spiral, Imperm, right? Because it's like mostly Earth and Wind are the most important ones. And yeah. So you could do that. It's a very interesting card, I think. And then also there's going to be decks that just like they don't care about light and dark at all, so they just play this one and they can't play Purge or Impulse, so they just play this and Imperm together, which is also fine. It's a good card. It's a good card. Just like other Dominus cards, if you find a deck that this goes into, I think you will be playing it. Right? This is basically the same situation as the other Dominus cards, where if your deck can play it, you probably will. And if you can play these cards in combination, they just get stronger. So basically, the more of these restrictions your deck can ignore, the better it becomes, because then you can play multiple together, which is good. It's the second worst Dominus card. The second worst Dominus card makes it the second best as well. Also, I think this doesn't mean anything, because they are all very good in their own right. And even if you count Dominus Purge as the worst Dominus card, it's still a very good card. Yeah. There are 4. Well, I mean, technically, Songs of the Dominators is not a Dominus card. But I know what you mean. Yeah, okay. There's technically only 3 Dominus cards. But it's a good card. The thing is, like, you don't have to compare these cards with each other. I don't think it makes sense to compare. For example, Purge and Impulse. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to compare Purge and Impulse together, because you never decide between those two. You know what I mean? Like, they are not really playable together. You never have a deck where you can be like, do I play Impulse in this or Purge? Let me see which one's better right now. It's always like, because they exclude each other with the attributes, you just play whichever one you can play, because they're all good enough. This has been proven, basically. Like, most decks in the past that have been able to play Dominus Purge played Dominus Purge, right? So yes, Dominus Impulse is better than Dominus Purge, but it doesn't matter, because if your deck can play Dominus Purge, you still play Dominus Purge. You can't play Impulse then, right? So like you never have to compare them in this sense. There's very, very few exceptions of decks that can play both. I want to exclude those from this discussion, because I know, like, yeah, technically Phantasm Spiral can play like both, and those types of decks will also get stronger from this, because they can now play like the entire Songs of the Dominators with like all the Dominus cards. Like, that's technically, imagine that hand trap package. Imagine your hand trap package is 3 Imperm, 3 Songs, and 9 Dominus traps. Like, you're basically always opening, like, you have a very high chance of opening multiple of the traps, which would make it very strong then. But yeah, it's technically possible in those types of decks. Unintentionally bad moment when it runs into a bell. I mean, yeah, sure, it can get belled, yeah, but I don't think that ruins the card. It's fine. And you're not afraid of talents? Yeah, essentially, it's an interesting package. But once again, we don't have to. We're going in circles right now. This card is good. This is a good card. And decks that will be able to play it, I think, will play it, unless it's just like not a good hand trap in the format. But I think in most formats, this would be a good hand trap. You know, like you can bounce, like, I don't know, you bounce a duo drive with this, and they can't negate it with cross at the end of their. You can even, the thing is, you can do this in the end phase, right? That's something I'm just now realizing. You can hold this in until the end phase and just bounce whatever end board piece they made, and they can't use the body you give back to them because it's the end phase. Like, end phase pop your detonator, or bounce your detonator, or end phase bounce your whatever end board piece you make, you just bounce it in the end phase, and congratulations, you can summon back a monster from your grave in your end phase, right? So it's a good hand trap / board breaker in that sense. I like it.